Hey everybody, welcome to the Linda Ronstadt podcast. This is your host, Steve, and today we're talking about 1974 to 1976, the Jerry Brown years. Wait a minute. This is Wing Talk. Today we have a special guest. Shawn Shepard is joining us from Defiant Wings. And before we get to Shawn, let's introduce the man of the guy with the best hair of all of us. That would be Luke. Luke, how you doing?
I'm doing good, yeah. We've had some really great weather recently, but it's been a bit windy, so I haven't been flying much. Other than that, yeah, everything's going well.
You were just showing us a plane a second ago.
I said I didn't want to talk about it. Yeah, I've been working on INAV Wing Pro, but it's going to be a while until it's done just because I'm so busy with uni work and work, so not ready for...
summertime plane then.
Yeah, I'll pick it up and show it, but it's nothing too special, really. Yeah, there you go.
Oh yeah, look at this. Like, you can see you have props on the front. So this is a twin motor.
There you go with my terrible camera. You can barely even see it, but yeah.
Yeah. I do have to say that I want to thank you. There was some advice you gave on the first time you were on the show. So this was. I've been going through. I've been redoing all the planes I have, and I had a plane that had some chips on the very end of the propeller.
Yeah,
and I was like, I don't really want to put a new propeller on it because I don't fly this plane that often. So I'm like, wait a minute. Luke said I can sand these things down. So what I did is I sat there and sanded down each side. Then I got my prop balancer out and balanced the prop, and the thing was just perfect.
Yeah, you can definitely sand props down. I quite often fly on a rocky beach here in Portsmouth, and every time you land, you'll take chips out of the propeller. You can't, replace props every flight. So the only way is to, either cut them down or sand them down, or live with unbalanced props, which isn't great either. So
fantastic. Next on the list was an ordinary guy. He comes from London town. Fridays he goes painting at the Louvre. He's bound to be proposing on a Saturday night, but he's lazing on a Sunday afternoon. A guy who's very busy. Hey, Darren, how's it going today? He's so busy, his microphone doesn't work.
I realise I need to turn the power on. Things work a lot better when there's power.
We have such a professional presentation here.
Everything's good. I actually went flying today, so yeah, nice day.
Okay, fantastic.
Great, I just recognized that shirt, and I think I need one.
Well, I couldn't wear the other one. You told me I was not allowed to.
Nah, that wouldn't be a good idea, and we don't want to talk about it.
I haven't seen this shirt. Only planes. It's like only. That's awesome. Mark Hoffman is here. Mark, how you doing?
Yeah, I'm doing great. Recently, I finally found some time and mood to start building again. So my AR Wing Pro is completely fit again. My Clouds is upgraded. My Funjet Ultra 2 is also maidened. Video will follow soon. And yeah, hopefully the stormy days will be over soon so I can go back regular flying.
What happened to your F765?
Yeah, I just replaced it. So this is the old one that was in the Clouds, and I just replaced it with the WSE. Because the WSE has the better barometer and it can handle the 90 amp continuous current that my Clouds will pull on full throttle. So I don't want to risk to desolder my shunt resistor in flight. That was the main reason I wanted to switch it. So yeah, that was the reason why I switched the flight controller.
Speaking of shunt resistors and pulling too much power, today's about power and big planes and lots of fun. And we're going to be talking with somebody. I'll tell you how this all started. What we did at the start of the year, we have the top 20 planes of 2022. And so I was just asking people, what are you going to fly this year? Because it's the middle of winter and no one's really flying that much. So people were talking about the planes that they're looking forward to flying, and I wanted to see the rating. And a few guys started saying, we're flying Defiant planes. And Defiant Wings, and I'm like, I haven't heard of this company before. So I looked at it, and I'm like, man, this is a small company. But these guys were really enthusiastic about how good the stuff was, and the planes were fantastic. And, you know, I think we got like maybe 7 or 8 votes or something like that. And I'm like, well, this is kind of what we're about, you know, putting the focus on these smaller companies who want to, you know, who actually serve the hobby. And so this was a guy on the list. I joined the group. I really want to see, and then there was just about 500-600 members in the group, but they're very enthusiastic. The people love the planes, and, you know, again and again, it's like, these planes are fantastic. I got it. I've been watching videos, guys, you know, flight video after flight video. I'm like, this stuff is actually really good. So I'm talking to one of my friends. I'm like, you know, God, I have too many planes as it is, but we really got to get one of these planes. They look fantastic. So that's how I reached out to Shawn. And this is, Shawn, welcome to Wing Talk. How are you doing today?
Thank you. Thank you. Doing great.
So
digging out of the snow here.
You're in the snow in Massachusetts, right?
Yep.
Yeah. We're having a blustery, cold, windy day, which they call summertime in the UK. So
True.
A little bit of rain, a lot of wind. I don't know. So I stayed inside today. But one of the things that we were talking about is one of the things I've noticed about people when they start up a company where they make something for the FPV community, it's either one of 2 ways it goes. Either they're a business guy and they're like, I got to sell 1 million of these, or they're guys, when I see someone that has an engineering background, I'll go, okay, I kind of know what the story is. Here's a guy who built the plane for himself, and you're like, I wonder if I can do this. And kind of like get hot wire, cut it out, cut out your first wing, take it out, and you show it to a friend, and they're like, this is really cool. Can you build one for me as well, right?
Yep. Yep.
And then what happens is their friends see it as well. Someone else is like, hey, can that guy build me a plane as well? And then before long, it's like you're getting orders from people, and then people are asking, do you have a website? How do I order this? And then after a while, you become like a guy who wants to sell stuff online. And so it goes from like, no, man, I'm just kind of like a guy who's building stuff for friends. And it's kind of, that's how it all started. And then all of a sudden it's snowballed into something else. And I'm not really out here to pimp my wares so much as I'm a hobbyist like you. I'm just making stuff.
Right. I always like to say I'm just some dude in his basement with way too much free time. That's pretty much how it all came apart. I mean, you're exactly right. I got, you know, into the wing hobby. I got into RC kind of later in life, but I got into the wing hobby and really wasn't finding what I was looking for. And most of my friends, guys that I flew with, I mean, we all flew hot wire wings from, you know, one of the 4 or 5 manufacturers that were around at the time. And I wasn't finding exactly what I was looking for. So I started, you know, an aerodynamics training on my own and just went through step by step. A good friend of mine, Adam Prue, gave me a great book I think it's by Andy Lemon, and it's about RC plane design. And just read through it and started doing the modeling and the designing and came up with something that I thought was something, you know, that I really liked. And I started showing it to my buddies flying around, and that's exactly what happened. You know, it was, oh, that's pretty slick. Can you make me one? And, you know, that's cool. Can you make me one? And at that time I was, you know, hand cutting them with a hot wire. So they were coming out, you know, well, the left side's almost like the right side. When you say semi-symmetrical, you mean the left wing and the right wing, not the airfoil. So I knew I had to step up my game a little bit. So I ended up building a 4-axis CNC hot wire cutter. And and at that point, the rest was history. You know, it just started rolling. You know, and it's grown. Last month was the 4-year anniversary, so We've actually been in business 4 years. I do drop the we a lot when I talk about the company. It is just me, but I've had a lot of support from not only my family, but some really great friends, really good test pilots, test builders. So I've got a good core group that flies my wings. Most of them are locally within a couple-hour drive, and they test everything I throw at them. So, and they they definitely test. I've seen the aftermath. I've had to send replacement parts and new center sections, and yep, that's not going to work. All right, back to the drawing board.
So one of the things I wanted to kind of get into today, because you represent a segment of the hobby, which is kind of something that we talk quite a bit about. When we did this top 20 list, we got commentary from one member from Germany who will remain unnamed, who, but everybody knows, who said, why are you guys always pushing this cheap Chinese stuff? There's better stuff out there. And so at one point, the custom foam market, I always kind of felt like it was like the craft beer market, which is the guys who like craft beers are a little bit persnickety, a little bit idiosyncratic. But after a while, now, before the show started, I looked up what the cost of a Nano Talon was going for, the straight wing Nano Talon from Zod. So it's $169 right now. And so when you look at that price range, what you look at is there's actually a lot of great custom foam you can get for a little less money, a little bit more money. It's in that same ballpark of the area. And all of a sudden, these planes aren't really that much different in price than a regular Chinese-made foam plane.
Yeah, they're pretty close. I think the the main difference is how much you want to invest in the building. You know, and it's hard to compare because I don't own a ready to fly or, you know, a kit. I've always looked at them as more assembly than building, whereas a hot wire kit, yeah, there's definitely more of an investment in time in the construction of it. Now, after you've built your first hot wire wing, I mean, they're pretty much all the same. The techniques are the same. The plane size changes, the measurements change, but the build techniques are all the same. But yeah, it's definitely more of an investment in time and effort to build it, but you get a far more custom build than you would any other way. I mean, you can do whatever you want. Some of them, you know, come without pre-cut bays, like the larger, the 63 and 66, don't have a cut bay because some pilots like to put the batteries in the cheeks, some like to put them in the middle, so I leave that up to the pilot. Far be it from me to tell you how to build your wing, you know?
Yeah.
I'll give you the outline, the rest is on you. Do what you want to do.
What we tend to get a lot of in this hobby is we get a lot of guys who come over from the quad side, and you know, we do get quite a few guys who come in from the line of sight side, but the quad guys seem to understand how flight controllers go together, and they see like, hey, instead of building another quad that's going to fly for 5 minutes, I could build a plane that will fly for 30 minutes, and so a lot of enthusiasm comes from that side, but their first go around, I always tell them, build something like an AR Wing 900. This is a very simple plane. Put a better motor on there. Or actually, what happens is they just buy the PNP, the kit that has the motor, comes with the prop, comes with the servos, everything. So it's ready to fly. And after a while, they're like, I don't really like this motor super much. It's not very powerful. Is there something better? And then we can start talking about, okay, we'll replace the motor with something a little bit better. You know, there's like, why don't you get yourself a good Sunny Sky motor? It's going to cost you about $25 by the time you ship it to your house, and it's going to be worth it. And then they're kind of like, next they go into the AR Pro, and that is a better plane. You know, this is more custom. Even the PNP on that is better than the PNP on the AR Wing. But you know, when you get to like going into from there, where they go from there is always, I don't know, it goes all over the place. Some of them go into, It used to be like they would buy the things like the Zode Dart XL or the Zode Talon GT, so like really good big planes. But now those planes are starting to get to $200 to $300 price range, where it doesn't make a lot of sense really to buy one of those, especially if, you know, what are you looking for? Some guys are out for speed, some guys are in for cruising, and it's just really that's the one thing. I mean, is the planes you offered, did they have more of a do you have a variety of planes for the guys who like, you know, relaxed FPV, or the guys who want to do racing?
Yeah. So the line is, there's basically what I call the Defiant line, which started with the Defiant 28, went to the 42, then to the 63, 66, and now we have the 52. And I classify those as sport wings. So the main emphasis there is a solid plane, you know, a wide array of configuration possibilities, a wide flight envelope. So a sport plane is really not designed to be a race plane. So it's got a wider flight envelope. So it'll do the high speeds. I've got one of my test pilots that's got a 52 that does 140 miles an hour. But I've spent a lot of time on the wing geometry on some of those. So the sport wings have a very low stall speed, very controlled stall when they do stall. And so, I mean, those types of wings could be run for racing if you wanted, or you can just go out and cruise with them, or, you know, you can go where I like to go, down low, bashing gaps and things like that. So the sport wings are kind of a wide flight envelope wing. I have two race wings. One is the spec wing, FPV WRA spec, and Alex Grief talked me into starting to cut those, and those have been a good seller. You know, there are 4 or 5 manufacturers that make spec wings that all meet the FPV WRA spec. So that's a race wing, and then I have the 38, the Aggressor 38, which is the first of the Aggressor line. The idea of that is a purpose-built sport race wing, a much longer cord, low aspect ratio wings. It is limited. It's a tough build, you know, to get the CG right, and you're limited on battery configurations, but it's insanely fast, and it's just silly how maneuverable it is.
Yeah, for reference sake, we should mention that 48 inch is equivalent to about 1,200 millimeters, 1,219 millimeters, I think it is. And so the 32, you're saying that's a 32 or a 28 for the Aggressor?
The Aggressor is a 38.
38, okay. So that means it's about 1,150 millimeters or something like that.
Yeah, it's all the people that I spoke with, the guys that I fly with, and some of the racers that I've spoke with really keyed in that 38 inch is really the sport wing size, the right wingspan for a sport race wing. So that's what I went with. It turns out that after I got that plane done, it flies slow really well too. So it's really a great all-around wing, but it's not as freely configurable as a sport wing. The sport wings, I mean, you can cut your bays any way you want, stick stuff all over the place. The 38 is a thin airfoil. It's a long cord, but it's a fairly thin airfoil, so there's not a lot of room, and has to be set up a certain way to get the CG right. It's set up with a motor mount where the motor's hanging way off the back. We're running partial wing ailerons or elevons so that the inner half of the wings are still foam. So you get a nice clean trailing edge, and then set the motor back off the back. So we're getting nice clean airflow to the prop. So much more efficient and quieter actually on the back. So
wow,
that's a fun plane. And
yep. It's interesting, especially when you talk about the sizes of planes, because that was the other thing we did a survey on, is what size planes are you guys, where actually when they voted on the planes, I could figure out the size of the planes that appealed to them. And the average plane was 1 meter. So that's probably like about 32, no, it's
39 inches.
1 meter to inches.
Yeah, it's about 39 inches a meter.
Okay, so yeah, that tends to be the sweet spot. And what I've noticed is when you get into these larger planes, when you start to get into 48 inches, like that is kind of was the RC standard for many years as far as custom foam planes were concerned, was the 4-foot plane, 1,219 millimeters. And once you start getting bigger than that, then the plane becomes it's very smooth in the air and it flies great, but it is also something that is not as maneuverable. And so it's, you will feel the difference between a 1.2 meter wing and a 900 millimeter wing. But once you get over 1.2 meters or 48 inches, it is, I know it doesn't seem like it, but it's a really big plane.
It is. There's always the old adage that bigger flies better.
Yeah.
And it's true. I mean, the fact of the matter is that aerodynamics just don't scale well. So, the same design that's 28 inches, you could create the exact same design in 48. 48 is just going to fly better. The aerodynamics are better. The Reynolds numbers, aerodynamics just don't scale well. But that was one of the things. I wanted a larger wing. I started designing one of the things I wanted a larger wing, but I wanted a gap basher. So I'm a bit of a gap basher. I love hitting gaps wherever I can. So, low and fast is pretty much my favorite flying style. I love to cruise. Most of my stuff is not insanely fast. But even an 80, 90 mile an hour wing, 18 inches off the ground, that's pretty fast. The world's coming by you pretty quick. So I wanted something that was larger, that was in that 42 to 48 range, but that was still maneuverable, that I could do hit gaps with. And that's what I spent a lot of time with, because when you're down low and you're hitting those gaps, you're coming from a quad background, FPV quad background. Before that, when you were coming to a gap and you weren't sure in a quad, you just said, no, wait a minute, we'll catch that one next time. The line's not right. We'll just stop here and go back. With a wing, you can't do that. You're committed. So I wanted something that was big enough, smooth enough, yet agile enough, and could slow down in case, I got those jitters at the last minute and wanted to slow it down a little bit. So that's why I went with the 42. And, I like to say that I arrived at the 42 through, all kinds of comparisons between wingspans and everything. But what I found was, at the time I was buying a 2-foot by 3-foot piece of foam from Flying Foam. And yeah. 42-inch wing was the only thing I could fit on one piece of foam. So I went 42. There's the real reason I went 42.
Interesting. Yeah.
But yes, as you start to get bigger, they are less agile. But the new 52, which is hanging up here behind me, I think a lot of people would argue. The 52 seems to be the magic proportion.
Yeah, tell us about that, because there's a lot of interest in that. And before the show started, people were writing in like, I'm excited about this plane. And that was one I keyed on as well. Just kind of like having a 48-inch plane, knowing like it's nice, but a few more inches, not 5 feet, but maybe 4 more inches would be perfect.
Well, so the 52, I blame on a friend of mine over in Australia, Dave Foster. He was a friend of mine and mutual friend of mine and Ruben Hodegi over at Sweep Wings. And Dave really was designing and building a 42 for himself at the same time I was. And then 6 months go by, and he builds his 64-inch wing based off of his 42. And over the years, he kept telling me, well, we had a 42. Now you got to build a 64 like me. And what I found was that a 64 wouldn't fit across the back seat of my truck. So I came up with a 63. He then cut his 64 down to a 52 and absolutely fell in love with it. Said it was the absolute perfect proportion. And our wings are very similar in proportion. We use a similar airfoil and a similar cord length formula. And so he's been after me for years to cut a 52. So I finally acquiesced this last summer and cut the 52. And I got to admit, guy's right. The 52 really does feel like the perfect ratio. I cut mine and 5 for the test crew. We took it to NEFPV feet meet in September, and it was the first time we had the 5-6 test wings all together flying at the same time. And we had completely different setups. So I'm flying 4S, I'm flying a 3220 Sunny Sky 1100 on a 10.7 prop. It's a great cruiser, sips on the power. It is a absolute effortless launch. It just kind of flies out of your hand. And I love it. You know, it's about 1850 grams all up weight with a GoPro.
What's the battery you're using as a 4S? What
4S.
size?
I run anywhere from a 4S 3700 to a 4S 6000.
Okay.
I like the 6000 in it. It's a high C, 60C 6000, and it's great. I mean, it flies forever.
The one thing that really appeals to me about that plane, other than the size, because the 48 it does feel really good, and I know that another 4 inches would feel even better. So that probably is like the perfect size. The thing that really was interesting is, like, I got a deal on a Sweep Wings plane a couple of years ago, and that came in. They're trying to push those with 6-inch props on there. So little 6-inch props are loud as hell, especially, and, you know, that's the problem that I've seen. That's one of the reasons why I haven't gone for some of those other more popular planes, because they want to push these really high KV small props. And I like larger props. That thing takes a 10-inch prop. So you're running with the 10-inch prop. And what that will do for you is it gives you a kind of, it'll be a really nice cruiser.
It is. And it's static thrust for days. And I'm all about static thrust. I like to, like I said, I like to fly low and fast. And when you're down low, you need that static thrust to get out of trouble. If you slow down and you find yourself in a tight spot, you want to be able to accelerate and get out of there as quickly as can. And for me, it's all about the static thrust. So, in fact, that's the same size prop I run on a 63, is the 10.7. I love a 10.7. It's a great prop. But, you know, it's a wide platform. One of the test pilots made it a twin. Of course, Frank makes everything a twin. So he's got a twin 38, a twin 66, a twin 52, a twin 28. Kevin Pratt. Kevin's got Kevin is the poster child for, more power. If you can't finesse it, just throw more horsepower at it. And he's running an 8S 52 that does flat out sustained 140 miles an hour around the track.
Wow.
It's crazy. But that's Kevin. Kevin builds a little heavier. He adds some more spars, goes a little bit stiffer. Kevin holds the Defiant record, which is an 8S 28 at 162 miles an hour.
Jeez. Flat
and level. I think he holds an overall record with a right wing Demon at like 212.
Oh, God.
Yeah. So Kevin, Kevin's all about going fast.
Yeah, and that's you brought up Right Wing. I love those guys, Chris Click and the group. They've had issues with the mini drac getting their hands on the foam out of Germany because the factory wants full containers of it. And the reason I bring this up is because we get guys in the group who are like, what can you do to make sure we can get this ordered? And I'm like, you need to order 250 of them. If you want to come up with $250,000, we can make this happen right away. And then that's one end of the custom foam. I don't know. It seems to be a line a mile long for people who want to buy that plane in particular. And then on the other end, when you look at the Chinese foam, there are some real popular names, but there's also a lot of these brands that come up out of nowhere. And every year there's always one or two. And I know, like, if you buy this plane and you crash it and you break a winglet or something like that, unless you can fix it yourself or mold something and make it work, you're never going to get it again unless you want to buy another kit. After about a year or two, these things are going to become obsolete, and you're going to end up with an orphan that you can only keep for a while until it breaks. Now, custom foam, I would imagine, like, if I were to buy one of your planes and absolutely screw up one wing, is it possible I call you up and say, listen, I need one wing?
Oh, yeah. Not a problem.
See?
So, I mean, they're fairly simple. I mean, there's a lot of work that goes into getting the geometry right and the proportions and stuff like that. But, the winglets are they're coroplast. You crash and you lose a winglet, call me up and I'll send you another one, or go to Home Depot, get a piece of coroplast, trace the one you have, cut it out with a utility knife, and you're back in the air.
Yeah.
So there's nothing, too horribly complex about it.
What about I'm always asking about the whole wing. Let's say you've
yeah, sure. Not a problem, because they're all cut, they're a standard cut, and everything I cut is still, I haven't retired anything yet, which is something I'm mulling over, whether I'm going to start retiring wings. I have 9 different wings that I cut, and for one person, that's hard. And I've switched to, especially during the pandemic when things got a little crazy and the market was up and down, I switched to a cut on demand. So I don't cut a bunch of wings and have them ready to go. When an order comes in, I'll cut that wing. And that keeps me from, because I've tried to guess, oh boy, 28s are real hot right now. I'm going to cut a bunch of 28s, and then I don't get another 28 order for 3 months, and I've just wasted all that foam on 28s, and I'm not sure when I'm going to sell another 28. So everything is cut on demand right now. And if you snap a wing or stuff the center section and want to rebuild, and it's EPP, so most of that stuff will buff out. So, I mean, you've got to stuff it pretty good, and happy to cut a new one for you. Not a problem. So, I mean, everything is standard. Nothing has changed. So if you need to cut one, I can cut one. Not a problem.
We have a question for Shawn in the chat. Daytona FPV asks, with the 52, how would they do with being launched vertically from the ground with it standing on its back? So is it stable enough to just launch it vertical while standing on the wingtips?
It would if I had winglets that were shaped that way, but my winglets are not symmetrical, so it really wouldn't stand up. I mean, if you wanted to cut your own winglets and stand it up, it'd take off vertically. That's not a problem.
Okay, because they are discussing right now in the chat how to launch it properly, especially because it's pretty big. But like Frank DeBras says, they just give half throttle and pull it up in the air, and it just goes away.
Frank is the gentleman who built the Twin, so Frank would know. Swiss Freak.
He also
so
says
basically you throttle up to about half throttle and just up over your head. It's an effortless launch. It really is. So, and one of the things that scare a lot of people about wings is launching them. you know? So I've always said that, you know, if the wing is set up correctly, it should come out of your hand and just fly.
Yep.
One reason that bigger flies better is that when you launch something bigger, everything happens slower, right? You launch that wing, it kind of lumbers up in the air. If it's going to go to one side, it'll give you a hint, it'll give you a warning, and it'll start to roll off to one side. You get down to a 28, you know, and you whip that thing in the air, and things happen pretty quickly. And if it's not right, you don't get a good toss, or you don't get your hand on the control fast enough, that can be over real quick. You know, before you get your hand back on the transmitter, it's on the ground kicking itself over on the, you know. You know, a lot of times what I'll do, this is a 28. This is actually the first, this is version 3. So this is the first production 28. On a 28 and the Sprite, I usually just do a football toss. I just hold my hand over the throttle, grab a hold of this, and just throw it.
Wow.
And if this is set up right, I can throw this 60, 70 feet. It'll pop up in the air, about 30 feet in the air. And then I can just roll the throttle on when I'm ready. You know, just give it a good football toss.
Interesting.
So, you know, that's one of the things that scares people about wings is launching. And, you know, and I know that if you're running a flight control board and you have auto launch, that makes things a lot easier. But, you know, something like the 52 is really just an easy wing to launch, just because you get up about half throttle and just pull it up over your head and off she goes.
Yeah, you were on the show prep yesterday. We were talking about the 52, and you said in that years with the GoPro is about a little under 4 pounds.
Yeah.
So that's what, about 2 kilos?
Yeah, it's 18, depending on the battery, it's about 1850 to 2000. So 1850 to 2 kilograms.
Okay.
It's like 4.5 pounds.
Yeah. That seems to be like a pretty, I know it seems like, oh, that's really heavy. That'd be heavy for an AR wing or something that's really small. Yep. This is a big plane, so yep. When you put that out, it feels right in your hands.
It does. It feels light in your hands. Simply because you're looking, you know, it's an illusion with your brain. You're looking at something this big, you know, that weighs 4 pounds, so it doesn't feel nearly as heavy as you think 4 pounds should feel. So yeah, it feels light in your hands. It's very, you know, it can be set up to be as docile as you want, you know, just a nice cruiser. It's very well behaved. Like I said, I spent a lot of time on the geometry to get the stall, the slow speed and the stall characteristics friendly. Yeah. So, I mean, I won't go so far as to say it won't stall. I mean, eventually every wing is going to stall, but you want it to stall predictably. You don't want it to drop a tip, which is a big issue with swept wings, especially flying wings. But a swept wing is going to drop a tip because that tip is going to stall before the root does.
Oh, interesting.
So I spent a lot of time early on, and I still spend a lot of time getting the wing geometry, adding the right amount of twist to the wing structure to make sure, or to at least help the root stall first. When the root stalls first, the wing will nose over and just start to lose altitude because you've lost the lift in the center part. By doing that, you still have lift of wings tips, so you still have aileron control. So you're completely in control still, you're just losing altitude. And as you start to lose altitude, you pick up airspeed and the whole thing reverses.
This is also something people confuse, because if you fly a swept wing and you have too much aileron throw, for example, and you go too strong on pitch, it also can stall even at high speeds, and then it just flips over, goes upside down. And if you're then not experienced enough to detect that this was a stall actually and not some kind of ring ripped off or so, you will have a hard time to catch catch it again, because then it will start to spiral while you are in a looping. And if you just pull up like crazy, it will just continue to spiral. And that's what just recently happened to someone in the fixed wing group. I think it was an AR Pro. He also stalled, and the wing started to spin, and he was in autopilot mode, and then he switched, I think, in angle mode, and of course INAV just pulls up. It doesn't try to stop the rotation first. It just pulls up, and that makes it even worse. So yeah, that can happen. That's one thing why a lot of people prefer the swept forward wings, like with the right wings, for example, because they never store the tips first. They store the roots, so they just go down with the nose. Right. But the funny thing is, sometimes then what can happen is that people mix up a bad tune with an actual stall on these planes on a swept forward, because then if you go into a looping and you have too much throw, it will just pitch the nose up and down while it goes around. Because it's stalling, catching all the time. Yep. And then people think the plane is tuned badly, but actually they just have too much throw on the elevons.
Right.
Hey, Darren, I got a question for you. You've been flying RC for about the same amount of time. I have about 2016.
Yeah, about that.
Okay. Luke has been flying since he was from about 2008, I believe. And
yeah.
How many of these planes do you have when you bought back in the starting line in 2016? How many of them do you still have? I mean, how many? I should ask, how many have you gotten rid of over the years through crashes or something like that?
I haven't actually. I think I've not actually gotten rid of any. But my first plane, actually, you won't see it, was the Riot, which is the second one into a traditional plane. Yeah. First FPV plane was an S800, which I destroyed. But I've still got it. I've glued it all back together. I just haven't flown it, but it's pretty much in one piece. So
there's a reason I'm asking this, is because I've been noticing myself. Like I'm going through right now, and I've told myself I'm going to fly every plane I have. I give myself a year to get every single plane flying. And I've been going back, looking at some of the notes, and some of these notes go back to 2017. So the reason I bring this up is because we're now in this era where your flight controller can be set up pretty well. You can set your plane up pretty well. The receivers are working fantastic. Your chances are you're not going to lose your plane, and more chances. What I've been noticing is, like, my first flight controller I still own. It's still one of my planes from 2018. These things stick around for a while. So when you look at these things as an investment, as in this is something that I'm going to enjoy for not just a year or so, I think a lot of these planes that I was looking at, like one of the ones I first got when I first got into the hobby was, like, I was telling everyone, you got to buy this Evo 1000 by Hacker. This thing, Hacker Hot Wing, it's an amazing plane. It flies great. I took it out. It was one of the planes I decided to fly the other day to see if I could still get it to fly. And it was flying great, but I was like, this is really something that was designed to fly for a summer or two, and then you throw it away. It's not really designed for long term. But there seems to but now with INAV, you can keep these planes around for a lot longer. So it seems to make more sense to put a little bit more money into the airframe and the electronics and have something that you can fly and enjoy for 5 years or so. So, and that's when I'm looking at these custom foam planes, with the perception of, like, this is something that you're not just going to buy and fly for a season or two. This is something that you're going to keep around for. I know the company's been in 4 years in business, and at 4 years, you still have your first few planes that you built?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I have everything.
Wow. Okay.
The only thing that I have ever retired, I mean, obviously this one has seen better days, but this was the first prototype. That was more than 4 years. That was before I started the company. The only thing I ever got rid of was my first spec wing was a VAS spec wing, and that was the wing that I learned to fly fixed wing on. I actually donated that a couple of years ago to a friend of mine who was getting started and wanted something that was already built, and I gave him my spec wing, and it flies like this, the spars are loose and but I always tell people too when I have a lot of first-time pilots, a lot of guys coming over from FPV quads. In fact, that was the whole reason behind the 28 was this is designed to handle 5-inch quad parts. So 2204 to 2306 fit right on the back. 30 amp ESC. So all you need is a couple of $5 servos, and you're good to go.
Which plane is that? It's the 28. What's it called?
Defiant 28.
Defiant 28. Okay.
Yeah. So it's a sport wing. It's the wing. It's the first wing that I sold. It was the wing that started the company.
Interesting.
And it's it takes all the 5-inch quad parts. I think the first year I built it, I had one pilot put a low KV 2204 and INAV on it. And I thought, I kind of giggled. I'm like, you're putting INAV in a 28-inch wing? Okay. And he put it in, and a bunch of guys follow suit. They love it. They take it out. They go cruising with it. They get as much range he would drop down to 3S and put a 2200 in it, and take it out long range. He could take it out and fly it for 20 minutes on a 2200, just go out and cruise with it.
We have people putting full INAV setup into a little glider. I mean, this plane is like this size. There's one guy in one of the German FPV communities who made a little glider. You don't see it from the outside. The only thing where you can see that it's a flight controller setup is if you turn it around, because you see the wires, I think, from the VTX on one side in the video in the wing where the VTX is mounted and the FPV antenna. He really makes it so clean. The servos are inside the fuselage. He has his Crossfire nano receiver basically embedded in the back where you slide the horizontal stabilizer in. In this slot, he made a small groove, put the receiver in there, shoved the Crossfire antenna into the tail, into the vertical stabilizer, so it's completely invisible, and all the wires go inside the fuselage. You don't see that there's a flight controller or any RC stuff in there, and he just tosses and flies it, and it's crazy. This guy put a lot of work in this little thing.
It freaks all his friends out when he puts his transmitter down and walks away.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, absolutely.
So a little 28-inch plane is going to be very agile in the air too. That's something, if you want to rip around a park in, that's a perfect little plane to fly that. And
it's one of the planes one of my test pilots always said that he was Chris Perry's very active in the multi-GP, and he used to take it to the quad races and fly it through all the gates on the quad course. And he used to like to freak people out because he'd put it into a wind and then cut off the throttle and just pull all the way back on the elevator, and it would just land vertically. So it would come up and it would just sit, and it bounce around a little bit, and it would just settle down and it'd land just about a spot landing. So it's very stable. It can fly very slow. That's, like I said, one of the things that was a prerequisite for me was being controllable down slow, and that one can just about land vertically. So it's a great little wing, and it's a $60 wing. And if you've got the quad parts already, if you've got an old motor and an old ESC and a receiver, or a receiver that has pins, or if you want to throw a flight controller in with INAV, if you have that stuff laying around already, it's $60. You're in the air, a couple of $10 servos and You know, I flew it with a 4S 1300 pack. I've got guys that fly with whatever they were flying on their quad, as 6S 1800 or 6S 1200.
So it seems like the market you're going after with this is the S800, the Reptile S800. It seems like it's a smarter version of that plane. If you're going to be spending the $45 for an S800, spend the extra $15 and get this.
Well, it's funny. You say it's the market I was going for. It's actually funny. I think there wasn't a market I was going for. And I've always told people I build wings that I want to fly.
Yeah.
I design them because it's what I want to fly. And it turns out a lot of people want to fly the same thing I do. And if you don't, that's great. There are a lot of other manufacturers that have different options. I'm not trying to hawk my wares here, but, I'm an FPV hobbyist. I got into wings because the adrenaline rush with a wing was more than the adrenaline rush I was getting from a quad. So I got into wings. I mean, nothing makes your knees weak and shake like standing there flying through, these tiny little gaps with a wing that you can't stop. Once you commit, you're committed. So it's either try and find the hole through to the other side, or close your eyes and wish that you get, hope you get to the other side. But so it was kind of the adrenaline rush for me that got me into wings. And then, I just found I like to fly low and fast, but I also like to cruise. And I didn't want to have a different wing for every mood I happen to be in that day or decide what to bring. So I started designing the 42. The 42, I lost my VAS micro wraith. It went walkabout on me one morning. And so Alex Greaves said, well, why don't you just make a 28-inch version of your 42? And I designed it. He cut it for me. And that's where the 28 got started. Like I said, I'm just a hobbyist like everybody else. I'm just going out having a good time, and people seemed to like what I was flying, so I started cutting them for them. I'm selling them, and we got them in 18 countries. So
what kind of hardware are you putting in these planes as far as when you take it out to fly? You're flying with INAV, you're flying with the camera and VTX, or no GPS, or?
I'm pretty much raw dog. It's just a receiver and servos, and I'm off. I do have some of the stuff I'm doing now, some of the research and development. I've got a large twin I built for doing long range, so that'll have a flight controller and GPS. The thing that I'm working on now, my VTOL, obviously has a flight controller. It's a tilt motor VTOL, so I've got a flight controller in that, but everything else is seat of my pants, and it's up to me to get it out there, and it's up to me to get it back. And for me, that's part of the fun of it. Sometimes they don't come back. Sometimes I spend the rest of the day going and looking for them, but I don't. Long range is not really one of my. I get too nervous on a long range flight to really enjoy it. So yeah, I mean, I'm on my long range plane. I'll go out a couple of miles and come back, but it doesn't happen often. I'm usually in a field, and I'm usually, a foot to 5 feet off the ground the whole time, about half throttle, and just looking for some hole to shove it through. So in those instances, chances are pretty good. I'm going to be able to find it even if it goes down, because it's not more than a couple 100 yards away from me. So
we do get guys who join the group, and the messages I get from them are like, I'm looking for my first FPV plane. I wanted something that's small and simple to fly around the park, also capable of doing long range FPV. And I'm like, okay, so what you're asking for is basically a sports car that's a roadster that can fit the family of 4, room in the trunk.
It gets 100 miles per gallon.
Gets 100 miles per gallon, right? And it's all gravel.
Yeah.
It's like
it's called a
little bit
uniform.
of everything. But so I started really asking people in the group, put out surveys, how far are you guys flying with these planes? How long are your flights? And what I'm getting back was the flights are lasting less than 20 minutes, and they're flying less than a few kilometers away. For the most part, the average flight, not and the guys who do long range FPV, man, those guys, they're completely set on something. But that, if you're into that, you are completely into it, and you know exactly
Building
what
specifically for that.
Right,
Yeah.
you set a plane for that. You're going out in the field, middle of nowhere. You've got the ground station. You know, you're doing the prayers. One of the best times I had with Mark Hoffman was when he went flying a mission, and it went away for 20 minutes, and he was like, one of his favorite planes was out of range for 20 minutes.
Yeah, just to make that clear, the flight itself was in total, I think, 85 minutes, and there were 20 minutes of this mission where I had no RC link, no FPV, nothing, where it was in a complete RF shadow, and I just had to wait. And I was texting with the guys in our group, and I was texting with people in WhatsApp, and I said I was shaking here, and yeah, and then I had the first glimpse of OSD text visible in my monitor, and I was okay, it's coming back. and that's the point. You say you start to shake and get nervous when you fly towards a gap, because you have a point of no return. You cannot stop on point. Right. You have to get it at one point, and that's like for me flying long range. I fly out, then, for example, I lose video, and then it's just, do I get video back? I never know. In that time, that's pure torture, but that's also the fun. And sometimes it can happen. The plane is like 10 kilometers away. Your battery voltage is at 3.6 volt, and that's the point when the fun begins. I had one funny story when I just did my first long range tries. That was when I just got an X9D radio, my first big radio before I used the FlySky i6, and I was using my classic AR900 with the stock setup, the bad motor on it, and I was flying long range. Back then that was around maybe 6, 7, 8 kilometers or so. I flew in one direction, and then I came back and I said, okay, I just put it into, it phase saved, and I said, okay, it will stay in return to home. So I just put my radio on my car roof to make sure it gets connection back, and I have my telemetry, and I can see what the plane does until I have video. So I got video back, and sometimes I control it on the radio and move the sticks when it says inactivity alarm. And that movement of the stick ended the return to home. It switched back into 3D cruise mode, and I didn't notice that. And after a while, my video quality went bad again. For some reason, I couldn't find where's my video feed is gone. And so suddenly I looked on the radio, on the telemetry, and it said distance to home 3 kilometers, 3.1, 3.2, 3.4. The battery was nearly empty already. And I quickly turned my ground station antenna by 180 degrees, and the plane has passed us like 200 meters away or so, and it was going away in the other direction. And then I had to fly against the wind back to us to get the plane back. Yeah, that was one of my first critical long-range experience I had.
So
but
Mark,
yeah, that's the fun.
Do you enjoy this long-range FPV? I mean, I don't hear you talking about going on into missions where you're losing video anymore. It's like it was a one and done for you, right?
I mean, I still do mission flying, but since then, I think I never made any. How can I explain that? I would do it again, like these extreme long range mission out of my link range, for example. But then the plane has to be in a very good shape. It has to be tested, of course. I have to know how long it can fly. The weather conditions have to be okay. But currently, when I do long range, I usually fly from a new spot I found last year. where I'm at a 120-meter high hill, so I can see over all the flat lands. I don't have to fly that high, and from there I have our ceiling so far, so I don't really need to make it as a mission flight. It was back then. It was just a waypoint mission because I had no car at this point, so I had to launch in a city park area where I can go out without flying over residential areas, and that was the reason why I used that mission, because I couldn't look above the hill about 7 kilometers away or so. Yeah, so. But nowadays, I prefer to keep my RC link, of course.
Yeah, and that's the thing. I mean, a lot of it, when people think of long-range FPV, this is something that you have to be. This has to be in your DNA because it's not something you just do. Kind of like this is something you take very seriously. For the most part, people don't do that. For the most part, there's just. I mean, there is a long-range FPV community. But they're the minority of the FPV community. Most of us like to fly for 20 minutes. After 20, 25 minutes, you're starting to like, the goggles are getting hot, and I want to get this off now. And, you're done with the flight.
Yeah, and you have to be ready to lose that plane. You have to be okay with it.
Absolutely.
Even if everything goes according to plan, there's still a 50% chance that something is going to go wrong. There's some interference somewhere. There's, you blow an ESC. I mean, let's face it, these are not exactly the highest quality manufactured military spec parts here. I mean, even if everything goes well and you maintain link and, you fry a shunt resistor, 9 kilometers out, or your ESC fries for whatever reason, even at 3 or 4 amps, it's not coming home.
I mean, even if everything is fine with the hardware, I've seen, I think it was 1.5 years ago or so, or last spring, there was a guy who is in another German group, Facebook group. He flies long range usually in a way that he constantly climbs all the way out. He never stops climbing until his battery is like, let's say 3.5 volt or so on a LiPo, or if he flies lithium ion, he goes down to 3.1 volts. The reason for that constant climb is that if he reaches the maximum distance, he just cuts the motor, turns around, and glides the whole way back, like 15 kilometers glide or so. Easy. The problem he had then was his battery, I think he flew with lithium ion, was at 3 volt per cell, and his return to home settings were set to max altitude, because he was also flying between mountains sometimes. And what happened, his radio battery went empty. So the radio turned off, INAV starts into phase safe, goes full throttle into a climb, the voltage drops, flight controller resets, and the plane crashed out of a few kilometers altitude. Yeah.
Just
Can
when
happen.
you thought of everything.
Yeah.
Murphy shows up.
And it wasn't even a hardware failure at this point.
Yeah, the thing I do when I first get the planes set up and I test them is, the one thing I think about is, how far do I want to walk when we have to go pick this plane up? So if I don't want to walk a couple kilometers away, I keep it close to home. So I have confidence. Well, guys, I think we're going to take ourselves a 3-minute break. So everyone, please hang in there with us. We'll be right back in 90 seconds. Welcome back to Wing Talk. I just learned that 3 minutes is actually 180 seconds, not 90 seconds. We're in the second hour of Wing Talk, and let's see. I have no idea what we're talking about the rest of the show, so this could be a fantastic show. Mark, you wanted to bring up something about a bug or something with INAV.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, there's one point. By the way, I think the topic for the second hour could be, or part of the second hour could be the long range topic. We just started it, so maybe it's a good point where we can continue. But there's one thing, we have seen a lot of posts in the fixed-wing group and also in the INAV Facebook group with the config change bug, where you have these hardware LPF to 101, the accelerometer low PF filter to 102, and I think heading hold rate to 101 also.
Right.
Very likely is that the cause of the bug was found by the developers after over a year. Finally, one user found out to reproduce it, and it was actually a bug caused by the configurator and not double checked by the firmware. So yeah, that was found and hopefully fixed in the INAV code and configurator code now. So with the next INAV version, this bug should be history. So no config changes anymore after using the command line of the configurator.
So that bug was, as I understood it, that was the same bug that reflashed your flight controller as well, or reset it to defaults?
No, the default reset thing is a completely different story. We thought for a while that it could be correlated because there is a sanity check of the configuration, and if it finds too many errors, this could cause the complete config to reset to defaults. But in this case, it was constantly only these three values that were changed. And the reason for that was some mismatch in a specific configurator state. The configurator couldn't see or couldn't read the MSP protocol version of the flight controller. So it assumed that it's MSP 1.0 and then sends a wrong command to the flight controller that the flight controller interprets as a command to change these three values. And this was causing the actual bug, but it has nothing to do with the complete config wipe.
But then the one thing we've learned about this particular bug was that, because I lost a plane because of this bug. But the one thing that we've learned about it was that things that save, such as the continuous auto trim or the stats or something like that, if you completely write to your EEPROM over and over again for the flight or at the end of every flight, this was more likely to cause the bug.
Yes and no. We know that the config wipe happens more often since INAV 3.0, but at the moment the developers think that it has nothing to do with the amount of config writes, like with the auto trim, but more with the small available storage and the stability of the onboard BECs for the processor. So it could be that there are, at least that's a theory. I think Darren, help me, Pavel might have said that, I think, in one of the GitHub threads. He said that if you store data on the flight controller, and while the data are stored, can be a small ripple in the power source, like from your ESC, beeps or whatever. This can cause a complete memory corruption during the save process and could trigger this hardware reset. But at the moment, they are still not able to reproduce that reliably. Luckily, we know that it only mostly happens with only 2 or 3 flight controller models, and with mostly I mean maybe once a year or so for a single flight controller. So it's not that critical compared to the config change thing that could ruin your day if you don't have a smartphone or a laptop with you in the field if you want to go fly. because the config wipe bug at least cannot make your plane crash. You just see you connected. Okay, you cannot do anything. You have to set it up from scratch or load back a backup. But the config change bug, sometimes you only notice when you try to arm your craft in the field outside. So yeah, at least that one is fixed.
So the thing that's interesting is that we had, for example, a couple of years ago, I had a plane that I'd like to fly in 2.4 gigahertz, and so I was constantly hitting failsafe with it. I'd fly to a point and I'd hit failsafe, turn around, come back. I was fine with it. Then after a while, I started noticing that instead of going to failsafe, it went to disarm. And this turns out to be, it was a disarm bug. And I saw it, and I think I mentioned something to Luke about it. And then a couple of weeks later, it happened again, and I had a good video of it, and I also had the log files of it as well. And I thought it was something I was doing wrong. And then some guy in Russia says, "Hey, why is my plane disarming in the middle of flight?" And he shows a photo of, a picture from his plane of OSD where you've seen the disarm screen. He's up, a few hundred feet up. And so I'm like, wait a minute, this guy's having the same problem. And I say, Mark, I've got a video of this. And it was really one of the more exciting times we've ever had, I think, in the group. All of a sudden, Mark and Darren are like on this, and next thing you know, they're talking to the developers, and the developers, like middle of dinner on a Friday night, are dropping everything, and they're like, "Oh my gosh, this is something that they found it. This is it," and we all got really excited about it. And that was, I think, really what brought our little core group here closer to the developers, and how I started to doing a lot of really positive things from that. I mean, Mark, if you really like INAV 4.0 or 3.0, a lot of the configuration, a lot of changes were things that Mark and Darren and Luke came up with and worked on together, as far as making sure that this was something that was more, INAV is something that's more approachable for the average user. So Mark is silent.
I mean, back in the days, that was actually a free FrSky protocol bug of the ACCST protocol, right. And basically Betaflight by accident was not affected, and Autopilot works also differently, so it was also not affected. It only affected INAV, interestingly. So a long time for that we looked in the wrong direction. We had to search for it. But yeah, luckily we found out what causes it and found workarounds. And I think with Access then they brought out a fix. With ACCST it's still not fixed, but I think the developers added a delay in INAV. Or changed something with the disarm delay in INAV, so it shouldn't appear anymore. But with our OpenTX preset models, for example, we have it fixed anyway, because we just switched the arming switch direction, or the arming channel direction, and then it was no problem anymore. But yeah, that was also a funny search, and basically that was exactly the time when I did my long range mission out of control range, because when I went close to the fail-safe position, I had to turn off my radio, or pull the module from my radio, to make sure it doesn't go into fail-safe and reconnect from itself again, because every time it reconnects, it had a 20% chance to get a channel glitch and switch out of mission mode. And it would be a very, very bad thing if that happens when I have no video anymore. So when I get to the RSSI range, I pulled the module, and when I had a stable signal back, then I pushed the module back in the radio. And during that mission, when I did that, exactly at this point, my plane switched out of the waypoint mode, and I had to fly it back manually.
Jeez. Well, fantastic. Yeah, that's yeah, that, I don't know. It seems like when we think about INAV right now in particular, it always seems like instead of adding new features, it seems like we're just kind of really cleaning it up and making it something that is I think the average person who enjoys INAV looks forward to every new version of INAV because it gets a little bit better each time. I mean, Darren's constantly working on the configurator, and he's got some really interesting things up his sleeve. I'm sure he's not ready to talk about yet, but he's testing them out, and these things are configurators can be even nicer.
To be honest, at the moment I've got nothing planned for configurator.
You showed me the servo thing the other day.
That's done. That's in. Yeah. That's merged.
Okay, fantastic.
Yeah, that's done.
So yeah, Darren, I think that's a good chance. Can you show it? Do you have anything ready to share your screen or so should I explain? Or just want to explain it?
Actually, one sec. Chat amongst yourselves.
Talk amongst yourselves. That's it. Okay, yeah, Darren's getting himself a air wing ready. So yeah, this is. We were just talking the other day that a lot of this, I didn't realize this, but the configurator is written in HTML and CSS.
I just searched while Darren is preparing. I just looked for the pull request, where I think there is a nice video. Maybe we can show that. Yeah,
yeah, it should be reasonably up to date. The coloured boxes might not be there, but go for it.
I mean, we are talking about the visual mixer icon, right?
Mixer, yeah.
Okay,
yeah.
Okay. So yeah, just to already explain the chat before we just waiting here in silence. Darren made a nice change in the configurator in the mixer. In the past, we only had the small box in the top right corner with a picture of a plane and some numbers on there where these servos should be. But what the new thing will be in INAV 5.0 is that if you add a servo to the mixer, the numbers on the image on the upper right corner will actually change, and it will show you what control surface has to be connected to which flight controller. Yeah, S1, S2, S3, and so on. This is a really cool feature, and I think it will solve a lot of confusion for new pilots.
I was really blown away. I was flashing on INAV 4.1 last night, and I realized that there's a search feature now in the when you flash. So you can type in F405 and you can find your flight controller, whichever one that is, instead of going down the whole long list of all the different flight controllers. So that's kind of really a nice little add-on. I think that was INAV 4.0, 4.1 that came out.
That might be free.
The search feature was in INAV 4.0.
4.0.
Flight controllers. I can't remember.
Yeah, the search line where you can.
It'll be even better in 5. Because now there was a thing that they make the target names look pretty, so they get rid of one of the underscores in the target name. So if it's like a Maytech underscore F405, the first underscore they get rid of. So if you just copy the version from the CLI and put it in that search box, it didn't find it, but I've fixed that, so it will now. So it's going to be a bit better.
Wait a minute, there might be some breaking news here. Darren said the word 5.
Well, yeah. That's
5.0.
Really breaking news. It comes after 4.
It's not going to be a 4.2?
I don't think so.
Okay. You've heard it here first. Don't let it, it's just top secret. Don't let the word get out. But there's next INAV is going to be 5. That means there's going to be some significant changes. That means you're going to have to, you can't copy your CLI and dump it into INAV 5.0.
I mean, you always can. It's just not recommended because some settings might have changed or might work differently now. So you might get an error if you paste your diff or your dump into the new version. Anyway, you should always only use a diff and not a dump. That's right. For an update. The dump should only be used for backup reasons.
Yeah, I go in there and I cut. One thing, I don't know if you guys do this. I take the. I'll do the mixture manually. I'll do that first, and then I'll cut that out at the very top of the diff file. So I cut out the where it's the no reboot. It's defaults space no reboot. Cut that out. Get rid of that. So, okay, we can go. Here we go.
Wait a second. I have to share the screen too. So Let's make this bigger here.
Are they seeing this? Okay.
Yeah,
okay.
Now I'm sharing my screen, yep.
Okay.
Right, so I thought I'd start with a multi-rotor just to be completely different. So if we go to aeroplane now, you'll notice that there's no numbers on it at all.
Interesting.
Because the mixer isn't actually loaded yet. But if we load the mixer, we get all the numbers up. The colors on the servo mixer, thank you, Charles, it is actually the same numbers as the surfaces.
Wow.
So add cool. A motor. Cool. I didn't actually test this on this flight controller, but this is one of those weird ones where the motors are on S1 and S7. So we get S1, S7 in the box.
Nice.
We can actually swap these numbers around, and it will swap the servos around. It's all ties in. So basically, this is all working off of this mixer table, which is what we should have been checking anyway. And it takes the information from that, puts it on that, and then on this. So yeah, it just makes everything nicer. We did an aeroplane. It obviously just adds those on there as well for the aeroplane. If we decide that we click on a flying wing, but we're actually an aeroplane, we can click the refresh button, which will bring the aeroplane mixer back. So yeah, it works quite nicely, but no more will we have problems where people are getting the wrong numbers because the diagram's wrong. It's all, that just proves the point right there.
What I like about it also, you can get the color coding with the tail and the rudder on this.
Yeah. So the color coding on here, all these boxes are actually generated. They're not on the image. So the colors in the servo mixer table just match up to the actual control surface and the boxes around the outside.
Yeah, that's amazing.
So that's a sneak peek of what is coming in the next version.
Yeah, and this is not only helpful if you want to connect your servos, like to know which servo goes. Also, if you have a flying wing and you have to reverse a mixer or reverse a servo, you now know, okay, it's the left aileron that's going in the wrong direction. So I can look here what servo I have to reverse, and I don't have to try and error.
Yeah. You can just say, oh, I need to reverse the green one. So there we go.
This is really great.
This is fantastic.
No, Henrik. They weren't even flaps to begin with. That's gone. There was no flaps up here anymore.
Did they remove the flapper on mode?
Yeah, I did.
Okay, great.
Actually, no. What if we look at aeroplane? We would usually have a mode up there. Well, actually, that should really be not there for an aeroplane. That's a quad thing. We have to get that fixed. But yeah, where this motor reverse thing was, there was a flaps option, but all it did was enable the flapper on mode on the modes page. If we look in here, we can still add the flapper on mode, and the mode is in the modes page. So if people will still want to do it like that, they can. But if I go to a flying wing, load mixer, add new mix, there's no flapper on in here. There's no flapper on mode on the modes page. It's all just automatic. There's no need for a button up there. But also, none of the default mixers have the flaps already set, because to be honest, most people just delete them anyway.
Yeah, Caroline Tyler RC is asking, will motors on quads be color coded to the outputs?
No, I've not done anything on quads at all. I don't, and that's because I don't fly them. I don't know how they're set up in INAV, so I'm not the right person to work on it.
Okay, so maybe Pavel can look into it and copy your system.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, all that would really need to change, I guess, is the numbers. I don't really know, or maybe the direction arrows, but because I don't fly quads, I don't set them up. I don't really do anything to do with quads at all.
Interesting. Wow. Hey, question I have for you. One of your videos, Darren, you're showing that you can show how you can work inside the mixer and put in a lot of the things that you would have in your radio mixer into INAV?
Yeah, it basically is. It's the same thing.
So the question I have is, like, I was looking at, I know you're familiar with it as well, which was Ethos, where they have in the one of the mixer tabs, you can you can put in all this stuff by pushing a button. Have we ever thought about doing something like that, where you can start to do like rudder mixing with ailerons and things like that with INAV?
Probably not, because in that particular case, it's just the word's completely gone now. It's shit. Yeah, it's coordinated turns. That's what it is.
Yeah.
So INAV already has that sort of built in anyway. You can turn on the turn assist if you wanted to use that. And a lot of what they do you don't really need an INAV. I mean, they have the flaps mixes, but it's stuff that you really need to add yourself. I think in INAV, it's not really something that we need a button with loads of different options for. It's unlikely a lot of it would be used.
Yeah, James Omega is also asking in the chat, what about adding rudder to a 4-elevon differential spoiler mix? I think if you are doing so advanced stuff like spoiler and butterfly mixes and all that stuff, if you would include all that in the mixer presets, then this list would be like 1,000 items long or so. I think that's if you do something that advanced by yourself, you don't really need the presets anymore.
I really think the presets should only be for the most basic setups. Standard 4-channel plane, a wing, that's like your V-tail.
I mean,
Absolutely.
I'm guessing that the 4 aileron differential spoiler mix is a full house glider, so it's basically crow braking, which you can add separately. Differential, you can have where is it? You got stabilized roll plus and minus, so you can have it over on the plus it's 100%, on the minus it's 40% whatever, which will give differential. So it's all in there, but yeah, it's a specialized thing. It's not really something that will benefit a lot of people.
Okay.
And I mean, just because Grumpy Old Nerd is said about the missing flaps option now, I mean, if you think about it, you have maybe very, very small amount of people who actually use the flap mode or the flapperon mode. I think the flapperon mode is still there to use the ailerons as flaps. Or as flapperons, but for dedicated flaps, you might have people who put them only on a switch to have them retracted or extended. You might have people who want to have 3-position on a 3-position switch, or on a slider. On a slider, for example, to have complete control over the flap extension. This won't work with the mode anyway, so it makes no sense to put a special flaps mixer in there. You just say RC channel pass through and you're done. And if you want to have some automatic flap control, you do that in programming anyway, and then you can say how much you want the flaps to be extracted. So it makes no sense to put them here in the mixer as a special item.
No, and the old mixers, I think I took that out in 4, but before that it was really 4.1, but it was really just flapperons, which you could actually turn it on a flying wing. The button was still there, so this is why it's now just automatic. So only platforms that have a tail can use the flapperons. Otherwise, it makes no sense at all.
Yeah. What happens if you select a mixer with? You cannot with flaps, of course. But you won't see the image change like with flaps. You won't see them in the picture anyway, even if you select them.
You won't see flaps here. No. It's just for basic channels, the same as on the original mixes. The other thing that I did change was every single mix that doesn't have differential thrust now only has one motor, because someone had a flight controller set up which only had 3 outputs, and even though there were only 3 outputs, 1 motor and 3 servos, having the second motor line actually stopped the motor working. So now, unless it says differential thrust, they only have a single motor by default. You can of course add an extra one. And I added the VTOL with differential thrust too. So and this is the best thing, you no longer have 0.2999999 minus 0. That really bugs me. But yeah, there's quite a few changes in the mixer just to make it nicer to use.
By the way, can you I would just tell you why, but can you open your website with the new tool you just coded? Because right now Leslie Yagan is asking in the chat, could there be a database of CLI for programmable mixes for various models? Pilots can then copy and paste the various mixes and enter it into their CLI. For mixes, that wouldn't even be a big problem if someone makes a collection of that in some kind of way. But speaking of programmable things, Darren just worked on a nice new tool on his website that allows you to move your programming lines, if you use the INAV programming feature, to different starting positions. So, like, let's say you already have a VTX control. Let me share the screen at this point. Like, you already have a VTX control from line 1 to line 11, and you want to copy and paste a program that another user made for you. You can just use this his program, put it into this tool, and say you want to have this program to start at line 15, for example, and it will automatically convert it so you can copy it to your INAV, and it would just be attached to the already existing programming part.
Yeah, so I've just copied something in just for the sake of it.
Yeah.
So I've just got 0 to line 5. If I want to start at line 10, just put 10, update CLI, and then it starts at line 10, and all the references get updated as well. So the only thing that it doesn't do as far as logic goes is if you have logic conditions operating something in the mixer. So you have to do that side of it manually. But yeah, this works for programming or waypoint missions. You can reorder those. So,
especially for waypoint missions, if you use the multi-mission feature of INAV, where you can have multiple separate missions stored on your flight controller, and then you select them with the index function, and you can use this tool to just stack multiple missions one after the other.
Yep. Or if you have a mission set out, you and your buddy want to fly at the same time, you can copy it between flight controllers.
Daytona, yes, this gray boxes sometimes. I also have this in for me, so I think it must have something to do with the screen share in Skype.
Better?
No, all good. It's just occasionally, like, the drop downs in the configurator are not visible. They are just gray boxes for me here in Skype.
Right. Okay, I get you.
Yeah, so this about the new tools.
That's
great
awesome
stuff coming.
It's beautiful. And then, so we're still on for the summer for INAV. The next version of INAV, I won't say 5.0, but the next version of INAV to come out.
I mean, it will likely be 5.0, just because there are some changes already in INAV in the current development state that break compatibility with old configurations. So by the version scheme, it will be 5.0, yeah.
So Shawn,
Pavel said something about a 4.1.1 or so, just a small bug fix release. I'm not sure if that's still on the schedule.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, there was talk of that, but it's not happened yet. I mean, I suppose we're just coming up to April. I think it's looking June, July, I think, for 5.0.
What bugs would 1.1 fix?
There was some, I think it was something to do with return to home on multi-rotors.
The topic where the multi-rotor actually overshoots return to home and continues in the direction. Yeah, I've seen a video about that. Under very special occasions, so it's nothing special for us.
Fantastic. Now, didn't one of the guys mention something about VTOL? I thought, Mark, you mentioned that for INAV at one point.
VTOL, yeah. I mean, you still can try to program it yourself. There's Eric Schneider, I think, in the chat, who said he is working on a VTOL and want to fly it or want to test it soon. Wait a second, where's the message he posted? That was mentioning you, Darren, by the way.
Okay.
Yeah, but there will be no official VTOL support in INAV. Pavel made that pretty clear, and there are still no plans to implement that.
Well, I wouldn't say never. I'd just say it's unlikely.
It's just not on the schedule at this point. So it will not be in 5.0, and it will very likely also not be in 6.0. Maybe till then, in a year or so. If a developer
turns up who is interested in VTOL, then there's no reason it can't go in.
Maybe a guy who makes planes, who happens to be designing a VTOL, and who also does programming for a career, who's a civil engineer, who happens to own a foam company out of Massachusetts.
Yeah, I'd be interested.
Go ahead. It's on GitHub.
It's in C.
Yeah, time seems to be the issue.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
I wish it's one thing I've always wanted to get into, but I've just never been able to find the time.
Have you? I mean, how successful, even with the Autopilot VTOL projects, how successful have they really been?
Autopilot does VTOL pretty well. It's a pretty plug-and-play solution, really.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and there's a lot of different configurations. So I mean, because VTOL can be anything from a tail sitter to plane to tilt rotor. There's a lot of different possible configurations.
Yeah, so I mean the most famous ones are I think tail sitter or complete quad motor tilt, where the front motors tilt down to give you thrust in level flight, for example. I have even seen a 4 tilt motor quad plane, so it basically uses 4 motors at the same time for thrust, 2 pusher and 2 tractor setups. Yeah, like this.
You need to say something.
That's 4 tilt motors. And 2 wings to boot. So wow. It's a tandem wing, 4 tilt motor. Yeah, this has been a lot of fun, and this is all fiberglass.
Whoa!
So that's been having to learn all kinds of new stuff.
Yeah, and then, Mark was talking about doing a VTOL as well at one point for what was on us.
Yeah, luckily I finally got one step further. I still have my Sky Hunter Racing up there, but still only the naked frame. But I think I have a complete set of motors now, maybe even enough ESCs, and I just got an that's the 765. I got an F405 ring flight controller for let's say nowadays good price, €50 for a used one.
Wow.
Yeah. 2 years ago I bought them for less, but brand new. Anyway, I have a flight controller now. I might only get some more servos because I need some of these very, very tiny Vortex servos. I will get some more. I'm not sure if I have enough of them. And then I could maybe finally start to build the micro VTOL project. And I want to try that with INAV. Let's see how that goes with the programming and all that, and the custom pit. I never used that custom pit controller before. And yeah, if it doesn't work out for me, then I will just smash autopilot on that and make a tiny little VTOL that's about maybe 350, 400 gram or so total weight. It would be interesting how that goes. I don't need my biggest problem right now. Let me get the thing. My biggest problem still is my first idea was to make a 2-axis tilt motor here in the back, where I can have a tricopter set up for hovering, and then wait, it has to point down, and then just tilt it backwards to give thrust for level flight and keep these motors here on the wings then fixed. But then I decided to make this one tilt only for hovering, and or maybe even a fixed one, and then use the wing-mounted motors that are at the front and connect them with the aileron servos. So if the motors are pointing up, the ailerons will be all the way down. And yeah, so wait, so you can see that better. They will be all the way down if the motors point up, and then if I level out the motors for forward thrust, they will level out, and I will have basically thrust vectoring on the ailerons and aileron control. So it should be very agile at this point. I hope that works.
Yeah, that's one thing I'm doing is the motors. When I'm in a hover, my yawing, I actually tilt the motors for yaw, which gives an amazingly crisp yaw control, which is, notoriously bad on a VTOL. Yaw is usually bad on a VTOL. You've got, all these big fixed structures, the rudder, you get weather vaning with the wind and everything. But if you've got, like in this case, I've got 4 motors, and when they're, when I want to yaw, I just tilt 2 forward and 2 backwards on the other side, and this thing will just spin around in a little circle.
Yeah, and that was the reason why I had that idea to make these motors separately tilted with the ailerons, because then I just have to have a fixed upward pointing motor here in the back. And I don't need extra servos. I control everything just with these 2 servos and the elevator. And yeah, I hope that works. I could even use the back motor slightly tilted just to offset the propeller torque. Right. By design, so the other ones can just be completely level, and yeah, use them for the yaw control.
Yeah, and that yaw control is tough on a quad, on a VTOL.
Yeah.
You also have one of the planes we haven't discussed yet. It's like the Ranger. It's a twin motor, small little plane.
The Renegade.
Renegade. You have one close by. Oh, look at this.
So this was a fun project. This came about with Andre Russo from the FT After Hours podcast. We were talking when COVID started and people weren't able to get out and fly at the parks and stuff. We came up with a contest. It was called the Yard Class Challenge, to try and get people, while they're stuck at home with COVID, to start thinking about designing a small plane that they could fly in their own backyard. So we started this Instagram contest, gave everybody a couple of months to come up with a plane, and then we picked a winner, and I sent a couple of wings off to the winners, and Master Airscrew donated some props, but this was my version of it. And this is all up weight with the battery, is sub 250.
Jeez.
It's running, we're running a pair of 1406s, or 1407 motors, 5-inch props, a big undercamber wing on it, and this thing literally flies in your backyard. I mean, you can almost run faster. I actually have flapper-ons on this. And this is a great little plane. It's a $50 kit. It's 3 little servos, and it's good to go. I run.
That looks like Mark's kind of thing right there.
It's a lot of fun because you can fly it through gaps really well. You got differential thrust. You can fly 3D with it. Fly it around doing inverted pirouettes or whatever you want to do. Flies great. It's durable. It's EPP, but it's not laminated. You can see, I mean, it's mostly glue. I have broken this plane in half, maybe half a dozen times, glued it back. It's still good to go. It's a lot of fun, but, I got a couple of pilots that will put like a big VTX on it and then throw Crossfire and a couple of 2S lithium ion pack and fly at long range. And with a 2S 800, I can get 15 to 20 minute flight out of this. They're getting like 30-minute flights, flying on the beach.
Jeez.
So this has been, this is the most fun you can have for the money. It's absolutely a blast. It's a great plane to learn to fly line of sight on, because if you get into trouble, you just cut the throttle and it will just land itself. So it's great for that. I mean, I fly it out doing hovers, and it's got plenty of power. But I mean, you can run these big props on these little motors because you never get past half throttle, because I don't care what motors you have on it. It's not going faster than about 35 miles an hour, no matter how much power you throw at it. It'll start to shake and wobble, and so it's a great slow flying plane. But I've got a lot of interest in a larger version of this. People have dubbed it the Renegade XL. So I don't know. I may look into it. The last thing I need is another product.
Number 10.
Right, number 10. But the guys are pushing me, and so this is the wing that I'm working on.
Wow.
So
okay.
It's good. This is a 48-inch, so it'll probably be in the 42 to 48-inch range. The current Renegade is a 24-inch.
So yeah, twice the size.
This may end up being something where, a couple of twin 22-millimeter motors, 2206s or maybe up to 2212s or something. But, that everybody wants a twin now. It seems like people are pushing for twins. So I've got a lot of pressure in the group for twins, for a big twin. So we'll see.
That's been strange. That's only been like the last 2 years that the twins suddenly became popular.
Twins are hot right now. What can I say?
Yeah.
It's funny. I have a feeling that the Alba Bird basically started that twin motor hype in the community. Although some people, was it the Alba? I know that was the Sonic model that was more or less hated a little bit. The binary, yeah. The binary was hated about its stall characteristics, especially in sharp turns. But yeah, I think the binary and the Alba Bird, that were the planes that started all that twin motor hype, and then they spread it out to smaller and bigger ones, where they get more and more famous. Yeah, I mean, I only have one twin motor, but after I now have hard-mounted a 1.8 kilogram battery in that, I want to take it over here to show to show again. Oh. It wouldn't even fit in the camera view, maybe one ring or so.
Oh, yeah, your clouds.
When you want to go overboard.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
I built this at Feet Meet this year just to have a plane to build. And I was able to find a small quad flight 6-in-1 ESC. It actually has a small flight controller.
God.
And these are just...
this is Luke's language. Look at this.
7,000 kV, like 1102s or something, 1002s. But it's just based on a fat Renegade body and a different wing. But it was fun. It was something to play with.
Luke,
it kept me busy all weekend.
Look at that. That's your speed right there.
Yeah, exactly. I'm quite interested. Now I've already searched 6-in-1 ESCs. I might just have
who it was.
2 4-in-1s.
It's a Goku board, so that's what, Flywoo?
Okay.
Yeah, I found it. It came as a combo, 6-in-1 ESC and a 20 millimeter flight controller as a combo.
Oh yeah, I found it. Goku Hex, 13 6-in-1.
Yeah,
interesting.
not overly efficient or, very practical for any reason other than it looks cool and it sounds pretty neat. It'll go a whole lot. The motors will go a whole lot faster than the frame will. In fact, that was one thing I was worried about, that the motors might take off across the field and leave the airframe.
Yeah, Luke has experience with that. By the way, speaking of speed planes, Luke, what about your 250G speed plane record? Will you continue that?
Nothing has happened for about the last year or so, just because I've been so busy with work, uni, and mostly I had so much more space. Since COVID kind of finished here, all my housemates have moved back in and I'm back to only having one room, which becomes quite a problem when you're trying to do carbon fiber stuff. Excuses,
always excuses.
No. So this is the turnaround point. If everything goes to plan, hopefully in June, I've already started planning it out. In June, I'm going to be moving into a new house, and I'll have 2 rooms, a bedroom and a big build room. So I'll finally be able to get back to doing some of that stuff. And of course, uni finishes in June, so should be able to crack on with that stuff again. Very much looking forward to it.
But I must say that's the right way to look at priorities. If you have a small bedroom and your second room you have and it's big, it's your build room. That's the right way how to set priorities.
The house I'm looking at, I would be renting from a friend, and the bedroom is 3 meters by 3.5 meters. So, an okay sized bedroom. And the build room would have been the living room. Or what is currently the living room, and it's 6 meters by 4 meters. So that should be pretty reasonable.
Nice to see you get your priorities sorted out.
Exactly, I have my priorities exactly how I need to be. I'm going to be sharing, or I'm going to have a housemate, and he's having the other 2 smaller rooms. But I'm really, wondering if I can stretch to paying a larger share and getting 3 rooms. Then I can have a dedicated room just for doing the layup stuff, carbon fiber stuff. But, no, I'm not sure my expenses can go quite that far.
That's a single man right there.
Ironically not, but yeah.
Probably for a while, too.
The thing that you got to keep in mind also is what we have in Massachusetts. You live in the west coast of Massachusetts, right?
The western half.
The western side of West Massachusetts. No, they're not coast, right? But so you're a town of 6,000 people?
Correct.
All right. So real estate, what does a typical house go for in that, like a 3-bedroom, 2-bath house?
Boy, the market's been all over the place. So 3-bedroom, 2-bathroom, you're probably looking at, depending on the house, $350,000 to $400,000.
Right. Okay. Yeah, that's 1.2 million here. And that's probably the same in the UK and, especially where these guys live in Portsmouth. Yeah.
Portsmouth isn't too bad. Probably about the same as in Massachusetts, I guess. Particularly the house I'm looking at, it's a flat, so it's quite a bit cheaper, and that's $250,000, and it's a living room, a bigger bedroom, and 2 smaller bedrooms. 1 bathroom without actually a bath; it's just a shower. And that's $250,000. So.
£250,000 to buy the place.
Yeah, I'm not buying it, obviously, but yeah, that's what it was on the market for.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so that's probably comparable to this coast, or where I am, anyways. If you head east, south towards Boston, the prices out in the Boston area are probably closer to what you're looking at on the West Coast.
And New York, yeah, because Boston's real similar to New York as far as it's a kind of a tighter little community. It's not that big. So yeah, it's and everyone wants to live near the coast as well, no matter where in the United States. You always want to live closer to the coast. So
Cape Cod, I mean, down on the Cape is ridiculous. You want something near the water, forget it.
You have to be a Kennedy to live in Cape Cod.
Yeah, $2-3 million.
Oh yeah, that's it's insane. Absolutely. So speaking of differential, living in different places, a lot of people in our group live in different places. A lot of people live in Europe and stuff like that, and some of them are probably jonesing for a plane like a one of the 52s or one of those the Renegades or something like that, maybe a Sprite. You do ship out to Europe and all over the world, right?
Yes. Yep. In fact, last couple of weeks have been a pretty good run on international. A pair of 63s went to the Netherlands. A 52 and a 42 2 weeks ago went to Australia. And before that, a couple of 52s went out to Scotland. So, wow. Yeah, I mean, I ship, like I said, I'm in about, I haven't looked lately. I think it's about 18 countries. Shipping can be a nightmare. It depends on the country. I ship USPS. Most of everything now goes, anything that I ship international goes global post. So it's reasonable. So let's see, the 263s that got, I mean, it's 263, so it's a big box. I forget how big, it's a big box, and the 63s are out of that 1.9 pound foam. So they're heavy. I forget, it was maybe a 9-pound box. And that was $75 to send to the Netherlands.
Wow, that's not too bad.
Well, it's not. If you consider, I mean, a single really 63 to the West Coast is probably $40. So, they actually ended up better off than me shipping one to California. Because it was $75 for two 63s. That's, $37 each.
What's a 53 typically shipping to the West Coast go for?
Geez, I wish I'd sent one out to my buddy Nate. He bought one. I want to say that went ground, and that was probably in the $30 range.
Yeah, that sounds about right. Okay, yeah. That sounds good. Yeah. Well, the thing I would suggest is that when you're looking at, I have a feeling like that 52. The thing you might want to consider doing is cutting out 10 of them at once, because I have a feeling that a lot of people, there's not 250 people who want to buy a mini drag, but I figure there might be about 10 people who'd be interested in buying that plane.
Yeah.
And I know of a couple people already, so you might want to think of just making like a set of 10 of those and making those available.
Yeah, I just got an order. So for me, international orders, if anybody is interested and they want to order and they're international, my website won't handle international shipping. So international orders are done through email on the site or instant message through Facebook or Instagram or however you want to get a hold of me. But the website doesn't handle the international shipping. So domestic orders go through the website. International is direct. And that works pretty well, because, if we need to look at different shipping options and things like that, I'm happy to work with people to try and minimize the expense as much as possible. I just got an order. My buddy of mine out in Netherlands that just bought the two 63s just ordered 6 28s. So I'm going to be cutting a bunch of 28s and trying to fit them into the smallest box I can possibly fit them into. I mean, what could go wrong? They're foam, right?
Yeah.
One thing too that I want to mention is that all the wings that I cut, because of the intricacies and the geometry in the wings that I've spent a lot of time putting the right twist in, I ship all the wing beds so that you can build them on the beds so that you don't take all that twist out that I've spent so much time trying to get in. So, sometimes shipping, the boxes are a little bit bigger because the wing beds are in the box as well.
Right.
But what we found is that really protects the shape of the wing during shipping because they're packed in their cores. They're never going to twist on you in shipping. And then you can build on them when you're building and laminating to make sure that the wings don't twist on you at all. So you get a perfect wing shape when you're done building because the beds are there to support the wing through the whole process.
Shipping these wirecut wings is even a big advantage for the overseas customs because you can say you just shipping material.
Right. If they open it up, I mean, it's just a bunch of materials, foam. Right.
Yeah.
No idea what's in there. That's smart, actually. Yeah. I'm going to talk to some of the guys because I'm going to be seeing all my homies in the next week here in Southern California and see if I can get together enough of some people will order some of these planes. Maybe you can send us out a care package to California.
Sure.
That'd be awesome.
I think the Lost Wing guys are down in your neighborhood.
Yeah, I think San Diego.
Yeah, I think they're somewhere down there. I know they're Southern California as opposed to the North.
Yeah, Lost Wing. Alan Strum was talking about these guys. There's like 4 or 5 of these guys. They all fly together, and there's a guy who videos them. That's Alan. Yeah.
Yeah, they're big on low and slow, and they've got some great videos of them flying standing up on the cliff over the ocean and just flying along over the surf. Stu, Mr. Virus Guy, does a lot of the T-shirts, the hand-cut block ink T-shirts. They used to buy a bunch of wings from me, and now one of the guys in the group is actually cutting their own wings. So they're making their own wings that are designed specifically for the type of flying that they do. So I have a 42. I have 2 42s. I have the standard edition, which is the 1.9 foam, and then I have the Lost Wing edition of the 42, which is the 1.3 pound foam. And that drops, going to the 1.3 drops about 300 grams, I think, on the overall weight. So they like to go very light, very small setups, light batteries. They won't paint. They'll use packing tape instead of laminate. So they go very light with their builds, and they get down and they fly in tandem, 5 feet off the ground doing 25 miles an hour chasing each other through the trees. And so it's just a different type of flying. So they've really fine-tuned the design of their wings to match their flying style.
Interesting. Yeah, the 1.9 pound, I would imagine, when that 52 is probably very stable, and taking off weight is not always a good thing. You kind of want the balance for a larger plane like that.
Yeah, it all depends on what you want to do with it. Yeah. And that's what's kind of nice about these style of the wire cut. You can really, once you get all the components, you can build it as heavy or as light as you want, depending on your flying style. I've got some customers that go bare bones, to go really small setups and want to go really light because they want to fly at 15 miles an hour.
Oh, that's the other question I had for you. You said in your website you also cut the bays out for people.
It depends on the wing. Like the 52, it comes in either solid core or pre-cut. Same for the 42. Yep.
Interesting.
And I cut a big bay. I mean, so the one behind me is the standard setup. So this comes with a pre-cut battery bay, which is a nice big battery bay.
Wow.
I can get a big 6600 flat pack in there. And then it comes with the electronics bay. This needs a little help, but there's an electronics bay in the back, and those will come pre-cut if you choose the pre-cut option. Otherwise, it just comes as a solid center core.
Oh, interesting. Yeah.
We've got the These are printed camera mounts. So this one's set up for the GoPro Hero, but there's one for the Session also. Their TPU, all the files are in the file section on the website. So if you have a printer, pretty much everything that I print.
You include the laminate too, right? Or do they?
Yes. Yep. This one's laminated, but I don't paint. I use monocoat. Okay. So I laminate a bare white wing, and then I monocoat over the top of the laminate. Part of that is because I hate painting. Part of that is because everything I fly is a prototype, and when I'm prototyping, I don't take the time to put paint on it before I get it in the air, and then I don't want to relaminate something. So I started monocoating over the top, and now I just like the way it comes out. They come out very clean. They're easy to keep clean, and if you decide you want to change the color of the plane, you rip the monocoat off and put another coat on. You don't have to worry about pulling the laminate off. Plus, it's lighter than paint.
How do you cut the bays out? Do you use a Dremel, or do you do it with a hot wire somehow?
When I pre-cut them, they are cut as part of the cutting process. So the wings,
you do it as like a profile section.
Yep.
Okay, yeah, of course, yeah.
That's why I don't pre-cut the cheeks, the bays and the cheeks of the wing,
yeah.
Down on the wings, because there's really no way for me to cut them in the hot wire.
So how do you cut those bays? Do you do those with a Dremel or similar?
Yeah, I do them with a Dremel. Usually, unless it's something really thick like this, then what I'll do is I'll just use a big razor knife. And I'll cut all the way through. And then I supply ABS plastic for the battery bay floors. So I'll cut all the way through and then glue the ABS onto the bottom. And that way you get the maximum thickness for your batteries to get them down in. And you get a nice hard plastic floor on it.
Okay, yeah, interesting. I've always done the, cut into little squares and pull it out with pliers method, but that's a bit of a pain. I was wondering if you had a better way to do it. And actually, that cutting all the way through and putting a hard sheet on the bottom actually does sound like quite a good idea. Yeah,
so the other thing you can do with that too is you can cut it all the way through the bottom and then pull the block off. Yeah. And then slice the bottom of the block off and then just glue it back in.
Okay.
That works too. And it saves a lot of time compared to plucking all that stuff out.
Yeah.
If I'm not going real deep, I'll just use a Dremel because it gives you, a really nice, precise cut.
Yeah.
But if you're going 2.5 inches through a wing, that Dremel will end up taking a lot longer. So just go ahead and cut it with a big knife.
Okay. And you got space in there for a flight controller, it looks like, especially.
I got space in there for a couple. GPS, whatever you want. You take this 52 and you put 10,000 milliamps in the cheeks, and that gives you that whole center bay for whatever you want. So yeah, a lot of times on the bigger wings, I'll put the batteries in the cheeks. This one, I just put it in the middle to save time when I was prototyping. But you can put them in the cheeks, and then that leaves that middle bay open for a flight controller. You could fit a full Pixhawk in there. There's plenty of room, and 10,000 milliamps on that. If you just want to cruise, you'll be tired of flying before the batteries are dead. Some of the guys I fly with are big on, the long range tandems, and the guys will go up with a pair of 63s and somebody will join them with a big drac or something. And then the guy in the drac will have to land and change his batteries out, and the other guys will just wait for him, and then he'll come back up and they'll keep flying. And they're very efficient. If you're just, the 63s, the 66 is the twin version of the 63. Those things, if you're just out cruising on a long range cruise, you can spend a lot of time in the air.
Oh, interesting. God, yeah. What's great is that, we can see having you on the show today is really great because we can hear the enthusiasm you have towards the hobby and how connected you are with the people who actually own the planes. So, it's like we were talking about a company that we both bought foam from in the past that went out of business. And
Yep.
it was kind of like the guy who owned the place didn't really want to super talk to you after you bought something from him.
Well, that's why I did this.
Yeah.
I mean, it was never a goal to make tons of money off it. And trust me, if you're hot wire cutting wings, it's, there are a lot easier ways to make money than you're not going to get rich off it. And
Right.
It was really a way for me to do what I enjoy doing, which I'm more of a builder than I am a flyer anyways. I mean, I love the build part of it, but it let me design, build, and connect with the guys who fly. And, you've seen you're a member of the group. It's not a huge group, but people put their footage up and they're very enthusiastic and, they like the wings. I like hearing about it, their stories, seeing their videos. And I constantly am putting any new build, becomes the banner of the group. It's really a group hobby, and that's why I did this. I don't want to go off and wholesale boxes to some distributor somewhere who's going to have the contact with the end customer. Anything I sell is sold directly through my website. I have the contact with the customer. And that's what I enjoy. I like meeting up with people from different parts of the world, different countries who have different ideas of how they fly, and they have different supplies available, different motor manufacturers and ESCs and things like that. And I like solving those problems and helping them come up with configurations and stuff. It's not about, if it were just about me coming down here and filling boxes and shipping boxes, I'd have been done 3 years ago because, after a day of work, having dinner with my family and spending the rest of the night in the basement and in the cutting room with a full respirator on. And, that's not my idea of fun. So if it was just producing boxes, I'd have been done a long time ago.
Yeah, and that's kind of the whole point of this hobby is like, and where people, when you think about, especially like INAV, you get a bunch of guys together, you talk to someone and you say, I fly RC, and the first thing they'll say is, do you fly drones? And you're like, no, I fly planes. And like, Then you get all the plane pilots together and you say, hey, let's put a computer on and fly so far away you can't see it anymore. And you say it to 100 guys, and 97 said, that's stupid. Why are you doing that? And 3 are like, that sounds like the coolest thing ever. I'm totally in on that. So we're a really small community when it comes to INAV. Even though we have, this week, our 8,000th member, we are still just, there's not enough of us around the world to really... here in Southern California, I mean, it takes me 45 minutes to drive to the next INAV guy. And this is a huge market. So, yeah, but that's how the group all started with the INAV fixed wing group. We were just a bunch of guys. I mean, literally, I had no idea how to fly an INAV plane. So I started the group hoping that we can, maybe get a few of us together and get some ideas going on how to do that. And I really anticipated the group would have 200 members. And we'd share videos. That would be it. I mean, it would be something small and nothing that big. And then the first day we had 250 members. It took off, but it was really, what we try to do with the group is still try to keep it small and hands-on and have people who are enthusiastic about the hobby, sharing ideas with each other and bouncing ideas off of each other. And what's interesting is we'll have someone like you come on and no one's ever heard of one or two guys in the group mention Defiant Wings. And then about a month from now, you'll see that 52 show up on the group. And then all of a sudden there'll be over the summer, it'll be 5 or 6 guys with us, or, the smaller planes, the 28s. That's a no brainer whatsoever. That's just, so I'm
seeing guys with the Renegade now that are flying them with the DJI on them. and a couple of guys are putting INAV on them. On the little Renegade.
God, that looks like that's the kind of thing that Mark would do if he only had enough space for another plane.
Yeah, currently it's definitely there's no room for anything more. I even might think about getting rid of some. I mean, we had the discussion before who has all his planes, and I have sold 2 planes since I started the hobby. One was a Dart 250G and one was the long-range AR900, but I still have the same models here, so I never got rid of any model I ever got. So yeah, it's piling up.
Yeah.
That's the thing about INAV. These planes come back, and as long as you don't land them in a tree or something like that, they stick around for a long time. And I think the hobby, when I look at, let's just say that I fly with a bunch of guys who fly with those hobby store wings, planes, and so if a plane lasts 6 months, they're usually selling it or trading out to somebody for something else. You know, it's a completely different side of the hobby. So,
well, yeah, and I think part of that is that when you're buying some of those planes, your investment is monetary. It's a capital investment. When you're buying something like these kits and you're spending, a week or 2 building, or some guys spend a month building. I mean, you really could build one in a weekend. Your investment is not only that capital investment, but it's an investment in your time, an investment in the build. And a lot of times people will hold on to them longer because they have more invested, not just the monetary capital investment, but an investment in their time and their effort, and their creativity. They painted them. They really, I've got a buddy that his wife has one of those Cricut vinyl cutters.
Oh yeah.
And, he's a big Iron Maiden fan, and his wife cuts him, all the Iron Maiden decals, and he's got got them all done with Iron Maiden decals and vinyl and everything. And he's spent a lot of time, and he's got it exactly the way he wants it. And there you go. And he's gonna hold on to. He's never gonna sell one of those. That's a part of him now. He's put the effort in, and he's actually the closest guy to me. He only lives about 20 minutes away from me, and he's the guy I usually go out and test all my crazy designs with. But he's got pretty much one of everything I have, and he has a lot of fun with it. His wife hates me because,
I was going to ask, all the planes on your website, are they your test pilots' planes, or are they just your planes or photos that people have sent in? Because some of the artwork, like I'm looking at like the Defiant 63 page, and like the top one's got, I don't know, it's a vinyl wrap or whatever, but I've seen airbrushed planes on there, and there's a lot of time invested in these models. And they're either going to be really, really careful with them, or they crash really well and don't break anything to spend that amount of time on them. But they look awesome.
They crash really well. No, they crash really well. It depends. So, like the airbrush ones, those are usually Kevin's. He goes crazy with the airbrush and the eyes, and and it's a personal expression of the pilot. It's the Iron Maiden decals. Well, he doesn't paint well, so he has somebody cut him on a Cricut. Kevin likes to do the airbrushing. The 63 you're looking at is Tom McCullough's, and he has somebody make the vinyl wraps for him. That's the Vinyl Ninja. He's down in Pennsylvania, but he'll cut. He has I think he has templates for most of my wings now. So guys will come up with an artwork, send him the artwork, and he'll do a vinyl wrap for them for the size wing.
Damn.
And then once they laminate it, they'll just put the vinyl over the top.
We gotta get to know this guy. INAV Fixed Wing Group rap.
I think they look phenomenal.
Yeah, so I mean, some of them are amazing, and I don't know if you've the 52, I think, is just mine, but there's another guy, Adam, who used the Cricut cutter to cut monocoat, and he pieced it together, and it's like a camouflage pattern, but it's these bright greens and blacks and oranges. It's absolutely amazing, and he cut out all those in monocoat and then ironed them on in the right configuration. It's absolutely amazing.
Wow. Well, that's a high note to go out on.
It becomes a personal expression. You know, no two wings in that group are the same. And that's, again, that goes to part of that personal investment that people are making. That's why they hold on to these wings for 4, 5, 6 years, because, you know, they put a lot into it. It expresses them, and, you know, and they want to hold on to that.
And the other thing that you didn't mention is that when you build planes, a part of this too, when you start putting the electronics, you can start thinking about what electronics will go on that plane, what motors, what props. I mean, and you can make them completely different. You can make that an 8S plane. You can make it a 3S cruiser with a big prop. There's just so many different ways you can go. And after you start to put planes together, you can anticipate what they fly like before you even order it.
Yep. Yeah. Yeah. And the group is great because chances are somebody has built something the way you want to build it. Just ask. And you know, the guys are more than happy to share their experience with what worked or what came home smoking.
Okay. So your group is Defiant Wings Group?
Defiant Wing Owners Group.
Okay.
You don't have to be an owner to join, but we do keep it a private group just to keep the riffraff out.
Yeah, perfect.
We're a decidedly low drama group, so
yeah,
we like to keep a handle on that.
Fantastic. Well, that's great. We certainly appreciate you having us today. That's a great way to go out. That is. Really want to thank you, especially for showing up in such short notice. Thank
you.
This has been it's fantastic. I just loved, you know, more than anything else, I just loved seeing the enthusiasm towards the hobby coming across. Because, you know, if someone is enthusiastic about it, you're responsible for talking to the people. If the plane doesn't work, you're going to be hearing about it. Or if it doesn't meet expectations, you're going to be hearing about it. So, you know, that's kind of like where I can hear what you're saying and seeing what's going on. And like, I know these planes are going to be really fantastic, each one of them. So really excited we have you on today. Thank you so much. And until next time, we're signing off, saying goodbye to everybody.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
See ya.